Hey, welcome to the Great Old One channel. Here I talk about gaming and role playing games in specific. And again, it's another Thursday night where I will be talking about First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And tonight's subject is going to be Unearthed Arcana, what I like and what I don't like about it. And I'll be covering a little bit of this. I have uh, invited another special guest. We'll see if the tornado hasn't whisked him away yet. But I'll go ahead and kick things off in the meantime. All right, let's see what we got. Some comments already. Well, good evening, all of you, Tillian and Ptolemachus and Joe Kaufman again. Yeah, John Collins. Awesome. My regulars, I guess we could. Dr. John Smith too are back again to pester me once more. Please. Questions. Awesome. I love talking about this stuff and talking to you guys about all this sort of thing. And hopefully you guys like, well, clearly you do. You like listening to me drone on about all of this nonsense. But, it's somewhat difficult for me to do this sort of thing on my own because I do not know everything there is to know. So I will hire somebody else to come on in with me, and he also will talk about a bunch of nonsense because clearly he knows nothing either. So without further ado, I shall bring him on. Welcome back, Tube Doors.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to be seen. Actually, excellent.
Yeah,
Sorry we missed you last week. You missed a good lively discussion that went on, but we went on without you. It's a sad day,
good.
but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I had plenty of lively discussion at home, so I didn't miss out on
Oh,
much.
okay, good. Well, you're back again to talk about First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons with me, and the subject I'd chosen tonight was Unearthed Arcana. I get a lot of players asking about it, asking about pieces and stuff that they like out of Unearthed Arcana, and I figured this would be a good time to maybe talk about the material that is in that book, what I like about it and what I don't like about it, and get your input on it as well. We'll start out with, though, here we got some comments thrown in. I better throw that back up there. Ah, yes. Yeah, see, they appreciate you there. Doom's awesome. As I understand it, Unearthed Arcana was kind of rushed into production because TSR needed some funding. Um, so Gary Gygax collected a whole bunch of stuff from Dragon Magazine articles and some of the notes and stuff that he'd taken, and published a book of a bunch of extra stuff. Um, so that sounds to me kind of like it was a little bit rushed, and I think even Gary Gygax said later that he wasn't real happy with what he had done. Not completely, anyway. So it's still official. It is still first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but just like any other game, you use what you want. You don't necessarily have to use it all. Alrighty, we'll hop in here, add to stage. Oh, oops. Let me remove this one, and we'll throw up my. Where did it go here? Bada boom, bada bing. I know I had it here. Let's see. Remove, add to stage. There it is. Perfect. All right, slide one. I went ahead and thank you for separating out these pages and stuff for me. Otherwise, I would have like cut and paste a bunch of images. Um, and selected a few pages in there that I wanted to go over. Let's see. Yeah, we'll get to that. John Collins definitely heard the grappling new rules. We're good. Yeah, we'll go into that. That's one of the things actually that I do like out of this book. Uh, yes, one of the new supplements is tonight's talk. Yeah, exactly. 1985. That is about as recent as we've gone so far, right? All right. So the addition of extra characters, extra races of characters to play. In and of itself, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It just adds some flavor and variety to it. Do I think it was necessary to throw in six different types of elves, three different types of halflings and stuff into the game? No, probably wasn't exactly all that necessary. Let's see, the year you graduated from high school. Perfect. I was class of 1984, so a little bit before that, but not much. Of course, I didn't grab this supplement in when it came out because being a kid from a family with a bunch of other kids, we couldn't afford these things, so we played with what we had. The addition of the extra characters, the extra races, not a bad thing by itself. I just think it was just not really necessary to include them. And for one of my opinions, this is where the downward spiral of everything became a player character race. This is kind of where it started. You know, oh man, no,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing I will say about that is in the player's handbook they sort of alluded to some of these things with the tall fellow and the stout halflings, and then hill dwarves and mountain dwarves,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of stuff. So maybe an abridged version of this, right? Because outside of NPCs, I'm not having dark elves in my game. Not an AD&D game at least.
Well, they're
I'm not
supposed to be
having
bad. Yeah.
Zwerf Neblin, Duergar. I'm not having any of that stuff.
Not as player characters or anything like that. No,
Yeah,
there's plenty of to choose from strictly out of the book that you could have fantastic games. Just because you chose an elf doesn't mean you couldn't play an evil elf that was on the surface, if that was the case, right? So, and the other part of
right.
this, the addition of the races, was the um, elevated um, class caps that they included with that in and of itself isn't really all that bad a thing either. Instead of a sixth level fighter, the dwarves now could go to where is it? It's on here somewhere. With a proper strength, they can get up higher in level. Fine, that doesn't really break too much of it. Humans are still unlimited as far as that stuff goes. So the reason for most of that stuff was a bit of game balance to try and encourage more human players in the game than there were non-humans, because just their special abilities and stuff they had kind of overpowered things a little bit, and having the bulk of your player characters to be humans kind of balance that sort of thing out. And now we got the running joke is okay, you walk into a room and it's you know you can't tell how big it is because there's no lights on in here, and everybody shouts, "I have dark vision." So there's where the jokes come out. Everybody's got it. Right? So the level caps being elevated a little bit, especially because they're tied now to having higher statistics. Fine, I don't. It's that's not a problem with this either. That's not really much of a game breaker. Ah, here we go. Yes, of course. We're all here for childhood elf games we can't grow past. So there's that. But he's not wrong.
Yeah. Significant others really appreciate that too. They're your most ardent supporters in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not about what races should be playable. It's about everything but human being very rare. Exactly. Well, one of the problems with choosing monsters as player characters, like the dark elves, right, the drow, is their extra special abilities and stuff make them more desirable, and if they are more desirable, the characters want to play them because of special abilities in there, and then humans kind of get pushed to the wayside. So rather than the non-humans being the rare part of the party, that's the humans are now the rare part of the party.
Yeah, and as far as like the dark races, for lack of a better phrase, I wouldn't have a problem if I were running a campaign in the Underdark. Incorporating those things in a case like that.
Well, that makes sense.
I would, yeah, yeah. In which case, the humans would obviously be the rare and disadvantaged ones,
Mhm.
which would fit the scenery.
Sure. Oh, watch your spelling. Well, yes. And then Joe Kaufman's remark, and don't forget your components. I think you guys have picked up already that I really like spell components as one of my elements of the game. Yeah.
They're necessary.
Yes, absolutely. It makes it that much more fun. Logistics. It's the game within the game. All right. Now here's more on the elves, and expanded classes, and just one of the things here too is in the original books, for the most part, most of your non-human races didn't have clerics for the most part. Now in this one, all of them at least have some element that they can be as a cleric class. The one that springs to mind automatically is dwarves, right? The only dwarven clerics that were in there were NPCs. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of players. Hey, I want to play a dwarven cleric. Okay, why not? Really, by itself, that doesn't really break anything, especially when they included in the back end of this book, and we're not really going to get to that today, was all the non-human gods for Greyhawk that Gary Gygax had invented. So put the two of those together in the same book made sense.
Yeah, those various mythologies or pantheons or whatever make it a lot easier. I mean, there's no reason in my mind that that you wouldn't have druids or clerics of elven descent, gnomish, dwarven, all of those things. Because it's a religious centric kind of world, in addition to being a human centric one, where the gods are real. So
I think the
would
original
find it
thought
hard to
was though.
believe.
Yeah, I think the original thought though was that they were not adventurers. They were the NPCs and stuff in the background. They were
Right.
healers and stuff you
Cloistered guys.
Sure, but now why not? Why can't they be the adventurers part? Yeah, let it go. That is one of those things. Is about the Unearthed Arcana that I don't mind and I can accept and I will allow that. Yeah, what elf shot the food? Well, that's what they do, right? Hunters, yeah. Let's see. We got racial preferences table. I didn't pick this one out for this particular part of the page. This page I chose actually for the bottom. The addition of new character classes. I felt that was totally unnecessary as far as the game stuff goes. Cavalier is probably the most, second only to the Barbarian, the most annoying character class that had come up. You already had a fighter with an attitude in the Paladin. Now we created a fighter with an attitude who could be of any alignment with the Cavalier. Why couldn't you just be a fighter with an attitude instead of having to create a brand new character class and then shove Paladin as a subclass of Cavalier? Kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit when they did that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would see. I mean, if they were going to move Paladin around, I would see them being better off. Hold on a second, I've got a fight.
Yeah, I think where you're going with that, Paladin should have actually more likely been a subclass of cleric instead.
Right. And then as far as Cavalier goes, if you really wanted something different, you could have had an add-on package to the fighter that specified like birth rank and these kinds of things. That would be just special things related to the Cavalier and his honor, and the Barbarian, that's just a fighter.
Mm-hmm. And Barbarians, I don't know. I don't think that was very well thought out. just
yeah.
It doesn't seem to me that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, at least they made an effort to make it sort of the more historical type of Norse barbarian rather than a loincloth Conan type or whatever.
But if you
so
wanted
they
to
did
play,
that, and
if you wanted to play a barbarian, why didn't you just play a fighter wearing hide armor instead?
Yeah, from a different location.
You could have been creative with your character design more so than have to pick another class to make him a barbarian. Just saying,
Yeah, and you can role play a version of magic and all that kind of stuff if you want to.
Sure.
So a lot of these were unnecessary, and I think that's one area where I think 2E did a little bit better was with creating kits for the characters so that you didn't have to have a whole bunch of different classes to choose from. You had different kits for fighters and clerics. And,
sure. But and then there's no reason why you couldn't come up with that stuff on your own. Nobody. I'm sure you're playing with some creative players. Hey, here's where you can make an actual backstory that kind of matters. Tell me about your character's family history and stuff like this, and then we can go from there. Let's see, what did we got here? We got Joe Kaufman, an evil fighter named Albtraum, which is German for nightmare or literally an elf dream. that nightmares were caused by elves sitting on your chest as you slept. Aha. I wonder where they came from. I guess I better lock my doors at night.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also, if anybody ever saw, it was part of, what the heck was the name of that? Stephen King collected a whole bunch of stories. And I think one of the stories that he rewrote was, and that was with Drew Barrymore in it, and the cat, right? And the cat was protecting the girl from the spirit or the little monster that would sit on her chest and take her breath from her at night. And the family thought it was a cat that was doing it because of the superstition and stuff. So you can see where superstition and lore and stuff from various cultures have come into the game and into the films and stuff. And because that's, we'll go off on a sidetrack here. Kobolds, classic literature and stuff. Kobolds and goblins are kind of the same thing. It's just a different name for the same sort of monster as far as that goes. So there we go. There's my current sidetrack on this. Oh, look, a squirrel. And we often go on to another piece. Additional weapons. I don't think that was absolutely necessary to add a whole bunch of more new weapons and stuff into the game already, because then you had to create new tables and all that stuff to go with it. By themselves, not really that much of a deal breaker, really. If you want to add in extra weapons or stuff, that's fine. A lot of there's just variations on other weapons. That's not why I chose this particular page, though. Why I chose this particular page is a little paragraph at the bottom. General notes. Weapons not permitted to a character of a certain class may be picked up and used, but the non-proficiency penalty for that class will always apply, using the most severe penalty applicable for the multi-class characters. And such non-permitted weapons may not be kept and carried by the character for use later. I would strike that last part of this one after the dash. You want a magic user who uses a sword? Fantastic. You can pick one up and use it. Excellent. Go for it. He's just never going to be proficient with this thing. He's always at that non-proficiency penalty. The only weapons that he can become proficient with are the ones that are on your list. For example, magic user caltrop. It's just something you throw on the ground. Why do you need a proficiency with it? Dagger, dart, knife. What? Yeah, okay. Sling and a staff. Right? Those are the things that he can become proficient with, whereas he can just pick up and use a sword. He's just always at the non-proficiency penalty. So I agree with it to that point, but just the latter part of it, and such non-permitted weapons may not be kept and carried by the character for use later. I'd say why not? Go for it. If your players are having fun running around as a wizard with a sword, he's just inept with it, let him have it.
Yeah, it really just seems like a heavy-handed way of saying, which I think would be much better, the character can never gain proficiency with that weapon to offset it. Because it doesn't make any sense if I'm a magic user and I pick up a sword in the dungeon and I can use it in there, but then I can't retain it. That doesn't make any sense. It would make a lot more sense if that last part after the M-dash said the character who has that as a forbidden weapon can never gain proficiency in it and improve like a martial class would.
Right. It should be amend that sentence to read that exactly. And the other part of it, some guidance on there for dungeon masters and stuff with characters under 5 foot height cannot effectively employ blah, blah, blah. I think they had some of that but they're just re-clarifying that with a little bit of extra info here in there. Dwarf can't use a two-handed sword. It's just too big for him to wield based on, not on his strength, on his size. And Jorge asks us, is that UA they're reviewing? Yes, it is, sir. It is. He says, nice. First time looking at it. Awesome. This is the Premier Edition PDF that was issued by Wizards of the Coast. Was this an anniversary stuff, or was this just something they'd come out? I don't remember any of that. I think you may.
Yeah, I don't think it was as much an anniversary as it was. I could be wrong about that. As it was sort of extending an olive branch to the old school players,
Okay.
around the time of 5e, and they retypeset it and all that, and gave it like premium rough faux leather covers, um, at least PHB Monster Manual, DMG, and UA.
I mean, it looks good. This goes by something that my daughter had brought up last week was PDFs that are searchable are outstanding resources for running games. I agree. And I'd rather instead of flipping
Yeah,
through pages, and I can search on my PDF and find the piece that I need.
right.
Let's see. Said a magic user wouldn't gain EXP. Depends on how you're divvying up experience points for it. If your magic user's running around the battlefield, swinging his sword around, fighting monsters as opposed to casting spells, I would perfectly agree with Tillian here. Um, but if he's using it to defend himself, um, walking up to the monsters that he put to sleep and coup de grace and those monsters and things like that's a little bit of a different story. Because XP, if I prefer not to drill down into the weeds and go on an individual basis. Well, how many hit points of damage did you do to that monster? That's how many points you get in this fight. That's just too much math and bookkeeping on my side. So it's a generalized pool that the players get if you were doing your job. And to his point here, Magic User wouldn't gain XP using a sword. He wouldn't gain XP using a sword if he was running around acting like a fighter during that particular comment. That's what I would extend his particular comment here, and I agree with him on that point.
And that magic user should probably lose XP for being played by a fool. Because I'm not going to
Well,
run in there with a
we
non-weapon proficiency
I
penalty.
think, I think
And
we covered it briefly when we were talking about experience points. Is how you play your character. Your dungeon master assigns you a score
right,
based on how you're playing your character for what percentage of the full experience points you're going to get. So you would lower them down to almost zero or negative. You used a
right.
sword, run around playing a fighter. Well, you're now no longer a third level magic user. You're a second level magic user now. Right. Told Micah says I use tabs on my books. I still have a hard time using a tablet at the table. Um, I'm always a book guy. I have books that if I have at a table game, I have books that I had out on the table, and that's just what they're for. I've got my collection books that are sitting on the shelf. Unfortunately, my UA copy that I have is just coming apart. The binding, I guess, whatever, kind of sucked, so it's going to be a permanent position on the shelf, and I need to get another one for at the table use. Yeah, one of the best things ever invented were those little plastic tabs that you can put on your pages. And until he said, I'd agree with your caveat. Yeah, thanks. You don't have to. You can do it as you want. You do it as you see fit, but it's just the way I like it. Thanks for your agreement. All right, next slide. Spells. There are some really good spells that came out in Unearthed Arcana that I like, and I would definitely allow the inclusion of those in my game based on some of those. The aid spell, the whole reason I had you pick this page out is the aid spell in and of itself is probably, I think, the greatest spell as far as those things go out of this book for me. It is such a highly useful low level spell, and it's a boon to the party in more ways than one. They get to bless and they get the additional hit points. I think it's a fantastic spell. And there's a lot of good ones in here that are very nice, useful spells for um, for addition into your game. You don't necessarily have to pick them all, but there's just read through and pick the good ones that you like out of here that make some sense that fit into your campaign. For
Yeah,
me, aid is one.
yeah, and like third level cleric, you've got things like negative plane protection. That's great,
Sure.
in terms of mitigating the effects of level drain. You got remove paralysis,
Sure.
which is a so there was, I mean, that seems like a curious omission from the game. There was no real way remove paralysis. And now there's a spell to do it. It's third level,
Perfect.
but
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
there's some cool druid ones, and wizard, Melf's acid arrow, Melf's minute meteors, Odaluk's resilient sphere. There's some good ones.
Yeah. But
And
like the way I do with magic user spells is if there's a name to it, you don't automatically acquire that when you go up in a level. You have to go find that somewhere to add it to your
that's a
collection.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this right also that I guess it is, isn't it? That Stone Skin came out of Unearthed Arcana? I mean,
Uh,
that's become so common that that's
don't know for sure.
that's
Are
that's
you
a
looking at
surprise.
the
Yeah, because
regular book itself?
I'm looking at the spell list, and they basically italicized
Yeah.
everything that they say is a UA spell.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Stone Skin is ubiquitous.
Now it's a good spell. Good spell for a magic user.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because one of your problems with being a magic user is defense.
right.
Let's see. Can you review every pole arm independent? that Joe Kaufman doesn't really know because he wasn't part of this conversation, but that's exactly what you said earlier before we talked about coming on stream. Maybe we can, if we
Yeah.
get to it, we'll talk about all the pole arms. How much does everybody love those pole arms? And Gary Gygax spent so much time on them and did nothing real special with them as far as the game. So yeah, if we got time, if not, we'll throw that in another episode some night when we'll just sit there and talk about pole arms all night. We could
Yeah.
probably do it.
Well, and my main point was, there's a specific point that I'd like to make about that if we get to it, about pole arms in general versus other concepts of the games and what people think of them.
Sure. Wyvern Watch is a great. Okay, Joe Kaufman likes
Yeah,
Wyvern Watch. Perfect. What else we
it is
got
good.
here? Let's see. What use might you have for holy symbol? The spell. The holy symbol is never consumed. Correct. Right. Um, most of your spells, if it doesn't otherwise specify, your components are consumed on their casting. Well, then you would have to have a backpack full of holy symbols as a cleric. But I think it's implied with cleric spells that your holy symbol isn't consumed with it. So, well, let's take a look. I don't have it handy. Could you look up holy symbol real fast? I didn't have it open.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Just gotta get
Just
through
open up
because
search
there's
and
so
type
many instances.
HOLY.
Yeah. So the spell is used to prepare a cleric's holy symbol or to create a new symbol to replace a lost or damaged one.
Okay,
So it's basically sort of a lore way and also an in-game way in case something happens to your holy symbol, say it fails a system or a item saving throw or something, to be
sure.
able to create a new one because that process had never been explained throughout all of AD&D until we got here. So probably what happened is somebody came out with an article on clerics, put in a spell that is related to how holy symbols are made, and then it made it into this book. So it's a utility that's yeah, it's a
All right.
good spell to have, especially in certain circumstances.
Thank you for bringing this up, Joe Kaufman. I will look into that. I actually like that spell, that idea. I've got players who, when they defeat, if they don't actually outright kill them, they'll take their stuff and they'll take holy symbols and things like this. Or if they do kill them, they'll destroy holy symbols and such like that. So if my players are doing it, I'm going to be doing it to them too. Um, excellent. They get captured. Their holy symbol loses the battle against the fireball that I just set off on the party. Now they've got no holy symbol. They have a way of actually creating one away from their place of worship or something like this. Joke on.
Right.
Could be a whole stream. Yes, pole arms could be a whole stream. And another book that I've seen that's got a lot of detail on pole arms was Palladium. Have you ever seen that? They did their, what is it, castle and equipment or whatever, something guide that came with it. It's a huge, thick book that had a lot of this stuff detailed in it too. All right. So yes, thank you, Joe Kaufman. Excellent point there. See, that's why we need these guys in the audience to feed us stuff that we can look up and help them with. Because otherwise, we'd be sitting here blathering to each other in the dark. All right. Speaking of
Right.
dark. All right. Another idea that I kind of like. Now I know there are people that don't like it. They think it's goofy, but cantrips. I would go one step further. They've include magic user and illusionist cantrips. There's also a Dungeon Magazine article, a Dragon Magazine article on clerics cantrips. I kind of like the idea of some low level magic. I like the idea that the magic user has to sacrifice one of his first level slots to pick up 4 of these. And there are some pretty useful cantrips. They're low level, low power, but they can be used to great effect. Um, I had on my Monday night game, we had a player that was a thief magic user, and he picked some cantrips that would help him as the thief, which was great thinking as far as his part, good creativity on his part as a player. Yeah. Let's see. Tillian says a Bardiche stream. Isn't that rather gauche?
Yeah.
Just saying. Never mind. Okay. Bad puns. I'm sorry. We just lost all of our audience. It's main gauche. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I like the cantrips too, for the reason, particularly for magic users, that it gives them the opportunity of being, a one-trick pony, right? Because when you're first level, you run in, all right, I cast my magic missile or my sleep or whatever. You cast that, and then you just walk around throwing darts or using a sling or whatever it is,
Mhm.
until the party rests. Now, of course, you have to trade a first level spell level for your cantrips, but there's some good ones. The chill on this page,
Oh,
dry
we can.
not on this page is grease. You know,
Yep. And grease has now become a spell that's in every version from there on out because it was such a useful spell and stuff. Right.
yeah,
Megan here pointing out playing Oriental Adventures as a Wujian, and DM allows me to use cantrips from UA. There's some good, and some of this is kind of like mischief magic. Perfect, right? Um,
right,
where's one of my favorites? There's a couple of them in here that I think work really good from the standpoint of you're being a magic user thief, right? That's a common multi-class combination for like half elves or something like that, right? Let's see, what do we got in here? Not is one. However, my preference for the other one is the un version of it, which is where's it at here? Untie, right? You've been captured. You're all bound up.
right.
You're and it's somatic components, but it's ones that you kind of make. Well, you know the
Yeah, and
if you
that
remember
warm
Conan
one.
the Destroyer when the two magic users are having the battle, right? And just that one motion from the one magic user is just quick, simple hand motions real close together. That's somatic component right there. Bam. There's your somatic component for your untie. You say it, boom, and now you're um, went right out of my head. The magic user
Yeah, now
illusion
you're
from
loosed from the bonds.
yep, boom, you're all set. Yep.
Yeah, and like warm that was on the other page, what jumps to my mind, it will increase the temperature of a liquid or solid non-living item by up to 40 degrees centigrade, not Fahrenheit. I don't know why they did that, or Celsius. But, that's perfect for foiling like a monster with infravision or something, you know, create
Sure.
something so bright
Well,
that
on the other hand, here one of
you,
them there is a fire finger. Creates a jet of flame coming out of your finger. It's not really useful for much, but
right.
you could light your campfire with it, right? You can light pine
Yep.
cones with it and throw them out of the tree onto wolves that are running around the base of the tree, right? Um,
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
yeah. And some of these if you were really a mischievous person, you could throw some of these real subtle ones in the middle of, oh, we're here at the negotiation, and okay, I'm going to throw a yawn on the other guy real fast.
Yeah, or a
Don't get caught
belch.
doing that because you're going to spoil those negotiations really fast, and now we're back to a hot war going again, right? But
Yeah, make somebody giggle at the worst, least appropriate time.
yeah, so like, uh, and something makes me lead to believe that Ptolemachus is beyond the age where he's continuing to grow. So I think that was I'm calling his bluff on that one. Then I took Firefinger, going to start making pine cone Molotovs. Yes, exactly. And hopefully you all got my reference for that one. If not, you will be flogged and summarily executed. Personal cantrips, some of these in here, right? There's that Firefinger one right there. You can see it on the sheet. Gnats.
Yep.
Oh, that would be annoying, right? Smoke puff, right? Well, what was Gandalf
Mosquitoes.
doing?
Yeah, that. Oh,
Yeah, right. And I like this page from the standpoint. Now we're getting into some first level spells. I think Alarm is one of the greatest spells that's in here. Fantastic.
it is.
Because now you can set up a rest area in a dungeon somewhere, and the magic user can set some alarms and stuff for you, so that you're not surprised in the middle of the night by a monster or something coming. So I think there's some good spells that came in here that are pretty useful. Not necessarily every last one of them, but some good ones. And I like the cantrips idea too. Again, I'd like the Dragon Magazine article. I have to look up which one it is about the clerics cantrips. It was all about clerics. It was a good one.
Yeah.
This is not in the original version that I can't find it in my book. Then again, I'm not leafing through my book at all, but there's an appendix in here, player section additions and corrections. They issued an errata that came out with Dragon Magazine, issue number 103, November of 1985, which is probably after this book was published. So clearly it wasn't part of the original, of things that were wrong with it. And then when they reissued this book, they put these corrections in as a page. I think it's excellent. Excellent that they did that. But this lends itself to me thinking there's a lot of them in here, that the corrections that they had to make, that it reinforces my belief that this was kind of rushed to production and not really well thought out or tested for large parts of it. The fact that they had to include
I agree with that assessment. That's always the thing. And I was speaking to Joe K earlier about some stuff with the disarming rules in unarmed combat, and the summary of that conversation is basically, yeah, they took a bunch of articles, threw them in here, edited parts that sort of overlapped where they thought about doing that, and didn't necessarily do it everywhere. One thing I like on this page is the effect of armor on thief skills. So
yes,
rather than just saying, hey, thieves no matter what can only, because that was always a weird part of Player's Handbook, particularly with a multi-class thief or something like that, that thieves can only perform their skills in leather armor.
Yeah.
This opens up the options. So if you have a fighter thief and he wants to use plate mail, well, that's fine. He can use his plate mail, but it's going to be at a serious disadvantage. So I think that tidies that up.
Look at those modifications in there.
Yeah. Climb walls minus 99. So at best, you're going to have a 1% chance to climb walls.
Not minus 99.9%.
Yeah. For the plate
you
armor, the field, and the
you can't roll that on D100.
Right. I guess you'd have to roll 100 and then a 100 again.
Or a D10,
or a 100 and a 10.
D10,
Yeah.
one D1 and a D10 to go with it, right? Add it all up. I think we can come up with a good combination. No, right. One of the largest complaints about first edition is that studded leather. It's still leather, right? Well, no, it isn't. Not really studded leather. It's different. They called it studded leather, but it seems to be historically more along the lines of what brigandine armor was. And you can silence armor up to a certain point. You can make armor a little more maneuverable to get around in. And even leather itself, being boiled leather is kind of restrictive as well. So
Right.
I'm leaning on the point where if you're not in any armor whatsoever, like here, the thief functions, you get an
Yeah.
improvement in your thief functions if you're not wearing any, right?
Right, right. So if you've got a sensitive mission to undertake or something like that, and you know you're going to be using that stuff, maybe you use no armor. Maybe you get an armor spell or something like that cast on you by a magic user. You have bracers of defense, or something, and you optimize your character to be the type that excels at these abilities at the expense of wearing protective armor.
Sure. Yeah. So this was a good addition. If you want to use it, take off and run with it. I like the addition of this in here. It does
Right,
add a little bit of bookkeeping to it, but nothing that you just can't write down on your page. Yeah.
right.
Creating the player character. Method 5. They added the method 5 in here. If there wasn't enough methods in the Dungeon Master's Guide that gave you better than average characters, method 3,
Yeah.
um, they added more in here. Based on your character class, you could roll certain other numbers of dice to come up with higher abilities. If you are rolling 9d6, you should be able to get an 18. Just saying. Right?
Yeah, yeah, I don't. You can take offense at some of the, at rolling 96 for a certain ability score or whatever. But I think for the most part, this doesn't the way bonuses and such work in AD&D. I don't think by any means it breaks the game. We've all had players who have rolled characters with multiple 18s. I've done it myself. And in no way does it break the game. This mostly ensures, in my estimation, that you're going to get the character that you want to play without sitting there. Because the fact of the matter is, in AD&D, in most cases, if you want to have a fun campaign and you're not a stickler for 3d6 down the line, which AD&D was never meant to use,
No, no.
you're going to let the player roll multiple times. You guys all get to the table. Everybody wants to have a good time. Guy bought a pizza or whatever. You're creating characters. You know, having him roll 3, 4, 5, 6 times to get the character he wants, or being miserable with the campaign. I'd
Well, I
rather
think
give him an option.
with this, though, we're getting away from the idea that your character is maybe a little bit above, but a personification of the average man who's now going out to adventure. Now you're getting into the idea that your player character is the exceptional guy, and if you're not rolling the exceptional guy, you have a nothing burger as a character, and I think that is incorrect too. You can have a
Yeah,
great deal
yeah,
of fun playing an average character because
yeah.
of the way
Now,
your bonuses and stuff go with stats. An average guy isn't all that bad off.
no, no, he's not. He's not, and it's just a matter of preference
Mhm.
for ultimately the DM and then his players. And maybe the 9, you don't have to have a 9 for the thing, but you all note that something is given and something is taken away, because with the 4d6 drop lowest sort of approach, um, you're going to, on average, get much better rolls then. So if the fighter chooses method 5 here, he's got 9 strength dice, but he's got 3 intelligence dice. So and
Yeah,
what? Yeah,
this,
4
like you
comeliness
said,
die.
this is the way to get you the player that you wanted to run. Rolling a paladin is exceedingly difficult, right? Rolling a monk is not easy. Rolling your stats for a ranger, not easy, right? Even with any method in there, it's there isn't a good chance for not being able to do so, right? Whereas this method at least gives you the chance to be able to roll a character with the abilities of the class that you want to play.
Yeah, and it's going to likely introduce a flaw for the character. So if you were using the Cavalier, for example, he gets 3 dice for charisma, 4 dice for wisdom. Not, that's going to be that's going to introduce some things that might not be introduced with the other methods, in terms of flaws.
Yeah,
So you're likely to get much more exceptional ability scores, but also get the flaws.
we got a couple of questions here. I'll get to this one first. I'll be using method 5 when I run my game. I like the minimum starting HP as well. Yeah, that's on this page as too. Here's your minimum starting hit points, right? Starting hit points for player characters, no matter what other abilities, right? This is the initial roll of dice or dice, whatever. This is what they start with. Bang, period, end of statement. And then from here on out, you roll your dice for your hit points. This isn't a bad deal either. So that if you start out as a magic user, you're not starting out with 1 hit point, right? If you're starting out as a fighter with a an average con, like 12 or something like this, and you roll a 1, you're not starting out with a fighter with 1 hit point. This is your starting hit point idea. It's not a bad idea either. I know a lot of the house rules are you start with max hit points at first level, bam, which makes the ranger a fantastic choice. So
Right.
And here's the other question here, related to this is a DMG question, but it mentions shield can be used offensively under shield use on page 28. No further explanation. Yes, this is one of the things I don't really like about the game, where they throw this stuff out there and then somehow or another the guidance on it got dropped or wasn't added in or anything like this. Do you allow strikes with a shield? Yes. With one of the things I do like about 5th edition was the fact that anything can be an improvised weapon. It didn't do a whole lot of damage, but you can use anything as an improvised weapon. Would I allow that sort of thing in this in 1st edition? Sure, why not? It was a common thing. You didn't, not just swinging with your sword, but you would go up there and you would bump your opponent with your shield and stuff to try and set him off, and use it as an overbearing or knockdown tactic and stuff instead of just for damage. So using it for that purpose, and then we'd have to go over to the weaponless combat or overbearing or pummeling tables and stuff, as opposed to just assigning it a damage. You weren't using your shield to subdue your opponent so much as you were using it to set him off balance or something. And so if you want to think of, in the way we described fights when we were talking about combat and all that, this is, your melee round is a minute long. There's a lot of things going on. Part of what's happening in there, aside from your parries and your feints and stuff, it would be a shield bash or something like this. So if you would imagine these sorts of things going on in the combat, and your 2-hit roll is just a meaningful strike that managed to get through all of this dancing that's going around. A lot of players kind of lost sight of the way that was supposed to work and pictured in their head how the fight was going on, and they thought it just developed into just standing toe to toe, swinging your sword, rolling the hit, and that's not really thematically how it should be working, how you should be thinking of it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Oh, Joe Kaufman's got some great questions, so he's banned from asking good questions. We can't do that. We can't have him anymore, right? So
let's just ban him from the thing so he doesn't put us to the test.
Non-proficiency strikes for strikes with the shield. But you see, one of those things is shields are prohibited to certain classes too, right?
Right.
Thieves couldn't use them. Magic users can't use them, right? Why not? Well, because they don't know how to use them. They weren't trained with their use. So I would say by default, a fighter is trained for the use of a shield. Whether he chooses to use one or not is if you're going to give somebody a blanket proficiency with a shield, it would be the fighter type, right?
Right. And basically anybody who can use armor. And later editions like 3.x, it's there's like a medium armor proficiency or whatever. And it affords you the capability of using certain shields, like a medium shield or a small shield or a buckler or whatever, and certain armor types beneath plate mail and chain mail, as I recall. I think the same thing applies here. If your character is allowed to use a shield, then that basically means, in the absence of a proficiency system for armor, that he has proficiency with that shield.
All right. Joe Kaufman says, "Brilliant, Goo. I like that perspective. I must have had a brief glint or shine off my forehead or something like this. It caused him to think I was brilliant. I don't know. We've got him fooled."
Indeed.
Oh, you didn't have to agree with me on that one.
I'm agreeing from my part, right? Because I think I have him fooled too, including most of these other people.
Is that all you guys encouraging him? Okay. Good to go. While we're here, one of the things that I think was absolutely unnecessary: character abilities, explanation of abilities, comeliness. Man, that has got to be. Everybody started using that. I said, "What?" The description of charisma from the player's handbook rolled your physical beauty into it, right? And it was a good explanation of it. You could be the most attractive person, but not have the greatest of personalities, so your charisma was 12, right? Because it was a combination of all of that stuff together, right? And it
and Gygax he specifically stated and gave references to certain historical characters that they were such great orators and motivators of men, whether it was, for good or for wickedness or whatever, that they would have an 18, but they certainly weren't an 18 as far as being a physical specimen. Somebody like Napoleon, that guy's obviously running around with an 18 charisma, but he's not too pleasant on the eyes, right?
Rasputin, Charlie Manson. He got some people to do some pretty horrendous things for him, right? Convince them,
right?
I mean, a lot of people relate this. The funniest thing I saw was that I believe it's on that page too, the little margin art where the guy's rolling dice, right? And I can't remember what he's saying. Come on, something or other, and the dice say Ernest Borgnine, right? It's like,
right.
Not the most attractive actor, but he's an excellent actor. I'd say that guy's got good charisma, even though he's not physically attractive as a person, right? So,
I just rewatched 12 Angry Men last night, and
did you?
And he's like the jury foreman in that, and just oozes charisma in the movie.
Does height affect comeliness? You could argue, if you're creative enough with your culture creations for your world, you could argue that this is correct. Yeah, right. Now that would kind of wash Napoleon out of it a little bit, but I mean, he would be outstanding as a halfling, right? So,
yeah, he would be a tall fellow.
Literally, right? Yeah, good. Let's see. Followers for that's not why I picked this page. I picked this page mostly because of the Method 5 and stuff that was on it. Not a bad system if you want to. Okay, we're going to play heroes, guys. Bam. Here's how you roll up heroes. Perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Acquisition of cantrips, magic users, and stuff, right? That was dealt with in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Okay. They talked a little bit about spell books in there, but here's something that expands on spell books. You got two types of spell books here. You've got your main spell book, which has everything in it, and you're not supposed to take that on adventures with you. That's supposed to stay in your stronghold or your hidey hole or somewhere safe while you are adventuring. So you memorize all your spells out of it, go to the dungeon, spend your day in there, throw your spells, and then go back to town at the end of the day, because that's kind of the way things worked. So there's where your spellbook mentality came from there. In this book, they included a travel spell book, and I think it's an excellent idea. You've got a small selection of spells in a smaller book that you take with you, that you're not worried about being destroyed or getting lost or something. Yes, it's expensive to replace, but it is not your main book of all your spells. And they give a good description of that in here. Cost of the materials, and it's short, but it's an excellent explanation of things like spell books. I like it. I like this part of the book.
Agreed.
Value of spell books. A standard spell book has an experience point value of 500 points per spell level contained therein. Again, considering cantrips as first level spells. And gold piece sale value of 1,000 gold piece per spell level applies to all spells, including cantrips. You capture somebody's spell book, you've got gold. A lot of gold. Because there's a lot in that spell book, right? It's and you probably just went up a level or so with it. If you catch even a mid-level magic user with all of his spells and stuff in that book is an incredible amount of experience. Now, I wouldn't give any of that experience to the fighter because totally useless for him. Megan Ballsy, I'm a spell hoarder. Of course. Okay, where are we?
Yeah, I like that they put value for the spell books too. Because certainly there's an experience point value depending on what it
Yeah.
contains. And I like them having guidelines there. You can adjust up or down or whatever.
Is a spellbook treasure? Yep, it sure is. And here's some ways that you can deal with it. I guess dungeon masters up until this point have been, how do I, they've defeated this evil magic user on the other side. Now, what did he have with him? Well, he had a spellbook. Well, what's it worth? And this puts some quantification to that. There's a good section of the book. Here's another piece I like. You are given plenty of guidance on starting spells for a magic user, none for an illusionist. Well, here it is. Acquisition of illusionist spells. How to dole out your illusionist spells at first level when you're starting the game. The same sort of table that they put together for the magic user is right here in this book for your illusionists. I think an illusionist is an underrated character. And here's some encouraging people to use more illusionists. They give you some guidance on how to start them out with some spells. It's an excellent addition. Should have been in the DMG, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the cost of spell casting, from NPCs and guidelines for the characters if they're going to charge somebody to cast spells.
And Joe Kaufman brings up something here that I failed to mention in there. Yes, casting spells from spellbook is interesting. Originally, the thought was your spellbook it didn't have all the magic and stuff contained in it like a scroll does. Your spellbook was just your book of the words that you need to intone, the description of your gestures and stuff like this. It's your manual of how to get it done. Well, in UA, they've actually changed it a little bit that if you cast a spell directly off the page, which, hey, I'm all out of spells today. I don't have any more left. We're in this emergency situation, but I got my book, so I'll whip my book open and cast my spell out of the book directly. And it's not a bad, if you want to use it, excellent, use it. I kind of like the idea a little bit to a certain point. But doing so erases it from your spell book. And in fact, if you look at it, where was it? Let's go back a slide. Did they mention it in here somewhere? Casting spell from the spell book, or did I not put that in there? I don't think I put that in that section. Here it is, top of the page. Casting spell directly from the book. There's a chance, 1% chance per level of spell that the spells immediately preceding and following the spell's cast will likewise be destroyed. Ooh. Right, I've lost a third of my book just casting this one spell out. In addition, there's additional 1% chance casting of a spell directly from the spell book will destroy the entire book. Ouch. Now you got to figure out some way of acquiring all those spells all over again. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would rule on the experience points for spell points. If you destroy a spell out of that book, you're not getting the experience points, for that spell. Or you destroy the entire thing out of the book. And that of course, assumes, that you have a requirement that the PCs return to home base with the magic items or spell books or whatever, and at least examine them enough to sort of warrant the addition of experience points. But it would go other ways in different games, right?
Yeah, it looks like Megan, well, she's also corrected herself here, right, is getting into the pun game with us.
If you have to explain the joke, it's not very good.
No, she misspelled it. Yeah.
Well, or correct it. It's
We'll
not very
cover it. Yeah,
good.
it kind of lost its punch at that point, right? You know,
Yeah, I was thinking movine like bovine, but
or yeah, that fits too, right? Yeah, right. Or a moving. Yeah, darn. Yeah, she's good. It works.
yeah.
Oop, here, let's see. Joe, Dr. Smith. Imagine Bigby casting a spell from this book and nuking the entire thing. Ouch. Oh, I think that guy was a high level magic user, really, and bam, that would hurt to destroy his entire book. Although, and I think to the point where the level that Bigby got, he probably has duplicate copies of his main book for safekeeping. At that level, with
Oh,
that much
indeed.
money, that much experience, I'm sure he would. Yeah. So think of casting from a book being last ditch effort when you're out of spell slots. Yes, Joe, that's exactly why you would want to cast from your spell book. You're all out of, you don't have any more scrolls, you don't have any potions. You just spent the last of your wand of missiles, and now your wand of missiles is now dust on the floor, and you gotta get out of here, right? Bam! As a last ditch, let's risk everything and cast the dimension door directly out of my spell book to get us out of here, right? Yeah, and I think Joe Kaufman hit it nail right on the head with this one here. Geez, I fail, right? And then Jorge says, we all roll a one sometimes, Megan. All right. On Monday night, I play with the first ever dungeon master that I've ever played Dungeons and Dragons with when I was 14 years old. And that guy is a master of puns. And it's all night long. You can't say anything with him not being able to find a pun in there somewhere. Yeah. Let's see. Joe would disagree. Yeah, okay. Let's move on to the next thing. 17 spell explanations, right? Here, again, like in the Dungeon Master's Guide, they went into some clarification on some spells and stuff for the Dungeon Master aspect. Even though things are written out, spelled out pretty good, is in the spell in the section for the players, that is for the players. The Dungeon Master has some extra notes in the Dungeon Master's Guide why that spell doesn't work the way that player thinks it's going to work. And there's some good spell explanations in here to include like underwater spell use. Wasn't really covered, but since you can have an adventure anywhere and we have spells that allow you to go underwater, well, what can I do for casting spells underwater and stuff as well? There's some good guidance in here on taking care of that. One of my favorite sections was this particular page, right? Effects of darkness. I'm sure there's a whole lot of curiosity about going, well, what does it really mean to be in the dark, right? Well, humans venturing down into the dungeon, the torches go out, they don't have a non-human with them with infravision or something. How do I adjudicate things that are going on in the dark themselves? And this section come up with some good notes on how to take care of things in the dark and what might work and what might not as well. If an opponent cannot be seen, attacks against that opponent or as against an invisible target. He's in the dark, you can't see him. You know he's there, but you can't see him. So it's like, where do I swing my sword at? Is he crouching? Is he standing? Right? Is he trying to go sideways so that when I thrust, he's trying to avoid the blows? Right? So that's what the -4 to hit goes with. Vaguely discernible, such as a faint blur or a darker shape. Right? So you're out at a moonless night. You can kind of see people's outlines. Still difficult to fight with them and stuff because you have no real targets and stuff that you can actually see or gain for. So you would still get a minus to your attack, but it's not as severe as being totally hidden. Combat is not affected by illumination or lack thereof in conditions of daylight or in light conditions such as those produced by most light-giving devices and spells, including the illumination of torches, lanterns, light spells, and continual light spells. So with these light sources, even though there's shadows and all that kind of stuff around, don't worry about it. It doesn't affect combat as far as these things go. Um, In essence, the converse of the above cases will hold true when considering creatures which function normally or in some relative advantage in conditions of darkness. Here's where you they said, okay, it was it in the dungeon in the monster manual or orcs or minus in the daylight, the
Yeah.
negative, right? Here's an explanation as to why that is, right? Um, Not just for orcs, but you could go with any creature that normally is it exists underground, comes above ground, or for some reason or another you throw up your magical flare, continual light spell, or something up at the ceiling, and now there's a bright light in there, as bright as daylight, and these monsters that are not used to those things would suffer the same sort of penalty you would in the opposite conditions, right? And it's good guidance on here for that. They talk about fairy fire spell. I think maybe that could, because it's written here, it's probably one of the ones that is seen to be abused um, in a lot of cases for fairy fire. Poor lighting conditions, such as a dungeon where only light comes from soft glowing magic weapons, or in total darkness. An illumination similar to that, a torch or light spell, anything stronger, the spell will function normally, but it will not contribute to the visibility target encompasses. Just because you throw fairy fire doesn't mean, and one of the things about 5th edition is fire gives you advantage on attacks against those monsters. Well, I'm out here in the middle of the plains in daylight, bright sun right overhead. What difference does it make if he's got little sparklies on him? Really, in this description here says, no, it doesn't make any difference. So some good guidance in here came about managing adventures in the dark, and it was a good addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good to go. I would check her dice. They are clearly loaded dice. Yes. All right. Here's the ultimate question we come to here: is the appendices weaponless combat? Um, because, and we talked about it a little bit when we were talking about combat, weaponless combat, unarmed combat, pummeling, grappling, and stuff like this. We discussed it based in the description in the Dungeon Master's Guide. A lot of complaints where that sort of thing is unwieldy. I kind of disagree to a certain point, but there is math involved. You got to be pretty good on math on your feet. So they put this out, which is an alternative, and there's a lot of people that like this better. So we got a weaponless combat system. There's a couple of different systems that they've added in here. So, like System 1, this system can only be used by humans, demi-humans, and humanoids against other humans, demi-humans, and humanoids. Any creature attack using this system cannot be more than 125% of the attacker's height. Right. So this is for brawls in the tavern, because they never happen, right? Because the bard was trying to charm the lord's elf girlfriend, and a bar fight broke out, right? But those sorts. So here we go. Covers those situations, because there are some creatures that is their natural attack, is a similar type of attack, right? Pummeling, grappling, or overbearing. So they've included these rules in here, and there are a lot of people that like them. There's a lot of good sections on here describing it, and I think they take a little bit. Well, Gary Gygax, if he wrote it, took a little more time explaining this than he did the other rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah, I mean that was basically just a wall of tables with some footnotes, stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
So why would anybody do that? Well, let me put that in the book then. But he found out
Right.
a lot of people do that, so he come up with some other rules to simplify it or make it easier, or a more efficient system. I haven't really given this a good look because I use the other rules out of the DMG, but I will definitely give this one a solid look over and maybe think about incorporating something like this instead. There's a lot to it, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of figuring that has to go on. A lot of it seems to be based on logic.
Yeah, and using other roles such as saving throws versus paralyzation or something like that, um, as a mechanic in the resolution
Yeah.
of the actual
Well,
action.
Gary did a lot of that. That's what he had a lot of things about roll a save or roll a d6, and that was his effort at just making things go quickly and resolving some things where players wanted a little more. Non-lethal combat, subdual, vanquishing, disarming. That really wasn't covered all that well in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't want to kill my opponent. All I want to do is knock him out. Right? Well, why would you want to do that? Well, because we want to capture the enemy knight and bring him back to our king. We don't want to kill him because the bounty was for him alive, not dead. Well, we got spells that we can handle that with, but that's beside the point. But so there were some other sections and stuff that didn't come up in here with it. Non-lethal combat was another good one. Appendix S was non-human deities. We talked about this a little bit. If you're going to include more on your races than the inclusion of the non-human deities, I think was a pretty good idea. You had some of that stuff in Deities and Demigods, and I think Deities and Demigods is an important book to have because it gives you explanation of abilities over 18. But aside from that, you don't really need anything out of it. Right? If all you had was Unearthed Arcana and you were using like Norse mythology, well, here you've got some monsters, and here you can create mythology for your monsters. Did I have anything else? That was all I had written in here for this. We're gone an hour and 13 minutes. You got something to pull up real fast that we can go into everybody's favorite pole arms?
Yeah, I might have inadvertently included a blank page. Is that actually the end of the PDF?
Bam,
Oh,
there
there
we
we go.
go. Aha. No, you did
Yeah,
not. There we are. All right. I thought it was a blank page. No
right.
problem.
Pole arms.
I lost my vision momentarily for a moment. Pole arms. Yes, we go nutso on pole arms. Now, my opinion is the spear is a really underrated weapon, and he gives it a paragraph of play here and moves on to the lance and then keeps going.
Yeah.
Joe Kaufman, did we talk about dwarves being allowed to be clerics? Yes, we did. We brushed past that a little bit early on. To reiterate, I think it's an excellent idea. I'm pretty sure player characters wanted to have dwarf clerics. Why not? It really doesn't break things. Ultimately, your human cleric is still going to be able to progress higher in level than your dwarven cleric can. But at least if somebody wanted to play a dwarf cleric, they brought it into the game and said it's not just NPCs. You can have a PC that does it. But I think there's where it started the plethora of everybody, turtles and tabaxi and tieflings and all that stuff coming into the game, and things of that nature. Just started that spiral. Ooh, and did we brush past it in here? It had to have been here somewhere. I have to go back and look for it. Before we go on to pole arms, where is it at? One of the things that I like about this book the least. Where is it at? No, I don't think maybe I didn't have you pull out that page. Weapon specialization.
Oh yeah, I don't think that I pulled that out. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Well, we should have
Maybe it's in
deleted
there.
that one
Maybe
from
it's
the book
just
entirely.
yeah. Well, you know what I find interesting about that? Weapon specialization doesn't really bother me too much. Now, when you get into double weapon specialization, and that kind of thing, it bothers me a little bit more. But what I find most interesting about it, regardless of what you think about it, or not you specifically, but regardless of what one thinks about it, is that Osric included it. So, in the Osric core book, weapon specialization is a thing. They might have marked it optional or whatever. It doesn't really bother me too much in terms of differentiating the fighter from the rest of the classes. Because again, it's a small bonus, but you get to double specialization and all that, and that
But
bothers
any
me a lot more.
bonus that the player gets that the monster doesn't have
Right.
available to them is unfair. And I like a fair game, right? So anything that a
True.
monster can, that a player character can do that a monster can't is unfair. Um, we'll go into it. I think we probably need to sit down one day and go over a lot of Lenlikovka's articles on combats and things because he drilled down into the nuts and bolts of that a lot. But one of the things
He
he
did.
said about it, and he actually did the math of what's the differences were between PHB and then weapon specialization and how often a character hit, how much more damage they were, how much more damage output they had
Right.
compared to it and stuff. And it gave the players an advantage over the monsters that the monsters didn't have any return for. And there's, I hate to use the word balance because it's not a balanced game per se, but it needs to be fair. If the players can do things, then the monsters should have those things available to them as well. And it doesn't. It doesn't.
Right. Yeah, and that is something that bothers me elsewhere within the rules. For example, consider exceptional strength and strength score bonus to hit and damage. For example, so you've got,
Yeah.
let's say you've got uh, a hill giant that'll have, I think, a 19 strength. That hill giant in the monster manual with a 19 strength, he doesn't get, +4 +7 or whatever that a character would get.
Mhm.
So, but I,
Yeah.
especially if a girdle of hill giant strength is going to give the player a 19, I would have liked to see somebody go back into the monster manual. Now I know some of it's been done in deities and demigods and maybe monster manual too,
Mhm.
but the monster manual should have been revised to where if you're fighting a storm giant, for example, with a 25 strength or a titan or whatever, um, it would be. I think it would be more fair of a game for the monsters if they had the +6 +11 or whatever it is. You know.
Sure. Right. And we hit on Gonzalo's hot button for that's the only thing he likes out of Unearthed Arcana, right? It's the thing that I like the least. Are you ready to win your argument? Internet caps, right? Perfect. Yeah. All caps, yeah. Um, well, let's see. Joe Kaufman, my DM lets monsters have see, and my monsters have specialization. I think it should be that way. Same with if you use crits and fails. Now, there is a paragraph or so in the Dungeon Master's Guide that says once you start allowing things like critical hits in your game, once you start giving bonuses like this, you start a spiral. Okay, now the players are overpowered the monsters, so now I got to give it to the monsters. Now the monsters are now, oh
Yeah.
wow, darn it, they're overpowering the players again. Now I got to give the players something extra, and you get a spiral that just continues to spiral out of control by countering these um, bonuses and extra things that you're given to balance them out, and you get them, and you run into what he calls the Monty Hall campaign, where everybody's just godlike all of a sudden, and it gets boring because I mean, I personally, I'd like a little bit of a challenge. If I'm always winning, sooner or later, I'm not really going to like what's going on. I'm going to move on. It's going to be boring where there's no risk or something to it. Um, let's see, what do we got? Let's see. Another factor is NPC fighters can also have weapon specialization or humanoids with the fighter class. True,
Yeah, that's
but
absolutely what I do when
why
weapon
wouldn't
specialization
why
is
wouldn't
in
I just
play.
okay blanket make all of my orcs fighters now they all have weapon specialization? Right.
That's precisely what I do if I allow weapon specialization. Provided the creature has one hit die or more, and it's a humanoid with a weapon. Similar to how most people would use weapons versus armor type in
Mhm.
both directions. You know.
Right, but then again, all the players are going to say, "Well, gee, now the orcs are beating up on us again." Well,
Yep.
I found this
And then
article
maybe
that
they'll be
gave me
like,
these things. Right? We're going down that spiral of ever increasing balance, trying to balance pluses and additions and criticals and fumbles and stuff, and it it's a dangerous enough game as it is. Adding those things in and then starting to try to do counterbalancing and stuff like this just starts to spiral out of control eventually.
Yeah, and you
Uh,
take it to the logical extreme. In later games, now you have to stat out the monsters across the board. Strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, across the board. Which 3.5 does. Pathfinder does.
mhm.
5e does too, right?
Yeah. We got Stephen Kennedy. I own UA, didn't allow it at my table. Some of my peers did. The game became a bit unbalanced, in my opinion. Just my take, though. Don't hate it. I don't know that necessarily that was because of Unearthed Arcana by itself, Stephen, but it probably was a piece. And they decided to use that. Now all of a sudden, they're going down that crazy spiral of trying to balance and counterbalance things to make it more fun and interesting for everybody, right? We got a rule. My ruling on halberds is that they can be used to attack in a straightforward thrust. Okay, yeah. Let's. I know where that comment came from here. Here's a response to it that somebody had in here. Where's it at? Bam. Good question. Is there a rule in AD&D about using pole arms in dungeons? E.g., about the ability to wield given in tight passages. Also, what about multiple ranks of troops using spears or pole arms? I don't think there's a specific rule. There is some guidance in there, like you have to have a certain swing distance and stuff. Like you can only do
Space
3
required.
in a 10-foot corridor and stuff like this. But,
Right, and you'll see the pole arms like an all pike, a rancier, a spedum, those types of stabbing, thrusting pole arms have a space required of 1 foot. You get into something like the halberd, and that has a space required of 5 feet. Implying that you have to swing the weapon versus just stabbing with it. So if it has like a foot or less, maybe stabbing through the front rank would be appropriate because it's a stabbing type of weapon.
yeah, and it was kind of they were designed for these sorts of things for fighting in formation, right?
Right.
My players also use their spears in place of a 10-foot or 5-foot poles to poke and prod the floors, walls, doors, or traps. Yes, exactly. And let me put this out there for John Miller philosophy. Perfect. A common walking stick for a medieval peasant was a spear
Right.
to defend themselves out on the road or something like this, right? So that was their 10-foot pole, right? I wouldn't let you touch me with a 10-foot pole. Well, okay, I'm not going to let you touch me with my 7-foot spear. I'm going to keep you away. All right. Do any of you allow your players to use spears or polearms to fight from the second rank behind the front rank of fighters? If nothing else, it does give reason to take spears on adventurers. Yes, I do. Gonzalo, who's in here, he's on my Friday night game. He knows I allow one of the users there to use their Lucerne hammer from the second rank back, right? That's the way that's what they were designed for to a certain degree. That's so they're mass combat use weapons and they work effectively that way. I will allow player characters to do that, right? Especially a group of characters that have been together for a while. They've kind of developed tactics and figure out how to do these things with one another. Because when they're just not sitting around the campfire at night, smoking and joking. They're practicing things and that kind of stuff. That's why you give them some experience. Yes, Kurniak can use his spear from the second rank. Absolutely, he can. Yeah, that's kind of what they're for. Now they also use them from the front rank too, but the guy behind them could use his spear at the same time. Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
and just again, it's not necessary, but to clarify my position is if it has a space required of 1 foot and it has a length, then more 5 feet or more, then yeah, I
Oh,
allow that. Otherwise, I don't.
here's Joe Kaufman. Spears are very useful in a dungeon, but pikes can't be used in dungeons, as I recall. But it depends on the length of the pike, what you consider the super long spear. Um, a lot of your dungeons, the twisting corridors aren't going to let you take them through. So, yes to this one. Depends on the type of dungeon you have. Right? You're not going to be able to get it. It's just too long to maneuver through some of those areas. And we haven't even gotten past the first page of pole arms yet. We're got a lively
Yeah.
discussion going about it.
Right.
Yep. John Miller philosophy, perfect quote right here. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. A good general principle of AD&D. Yes, if you're going to have rules, they need to apply to everything in your milieu there, right? Everything in your universe kind of needs to all have things that they can all do. These spells in these books, hey, fantastic spells, but my monster that has clerical abilities can cast them spells too. Right, just because it's in UA doesn't mean that it's exclusive to only player characters. Whereas weapon specialization was exclusive to the fighters, right? UA is a hot topic. People are still arguing about it today. Yes, we are. And me and Gonzalo argue about it on a regular basis. Yeah. And I love them anyway. Oh, yeah. When does Crunette get magic resistance? I don't know. You might pick up a magic item that'll give him magic resistance. He might end up getting a artifact or something. He chops his hand off and slaps that hand of Vecna on it, right? Gets a magic resistance when it comes to it. Entirely possible for them to acquire magic resistance. Ion Stone that does something like that, right? So it is possible for characters to get abilities of monsters, right? Today, yeah. Here's Joe Kosman, UA's hot topics. People start arguing about it today, and Jorge, the answer is today. Like this, it's streaming.
Yeah.
Right, perfect. Argue about it? Nah. Lively discussion, I think, is a better word instead of argument, right? Double specialization by try it makes me a bit biased. Yes, sure, right? Because it is benefiting you. You're definitely going to have a bias for it. Yeah. To be honest, I do give Shamans and Witch Doctor spells from Oriental Adventures, which are not available player characters currently. That's okay. That's your game. By all means, go ahead and do that. Right?
And I would certainly do that with an ogre mage.
Sure. That is an exotic monster from somewhere else, right? But
Right.
even if I gave them those spells, somewhere along the lines, a player character is going to be able to find those spells somewhere if he wants to include them in his book. I'm not going to just outright give them to him, but if they exist for the monster, it'll also exist for a player character somewhere along the lines out there. Probably not going to be easy for him to go get them, but they're going to be there. Apostrophes there. You got to do your punctuation in there, Gonzalo. I'm not out of you're out of order. The whole system's out of order. What? Oh man, what movie's that one from? Darn it.
I can't remember right now, but I can hear it in my head.
Yep, I can hear it too. Stephen Kennedy. Now that one, I know where that one came off right off the bat. Sorry.
And me too.
Yeah, being a jarhead, I've heard that plenty. Okay. Okay, let's see if we could go another page and do some more arguing about pole arms. Right? Here we talk about the pike. Although there's no set rule, any spear with a shaft of 15 foot or longer. Right? If I'm moving through a dungeon with a 10-foot wide corridor and we around a bend, probably not going to be able to get a 15 foot or longer item around that bend very easily. Right? Designed to deliver a thrusting attack an opponent at a long range. Great length is used to keep him there. Yeah. Okay. Not only do you get to set your weapon against a charge, right? You get him the previous round and this round. So,
right.
Yeah, but a different description. But if you're looking at these weapons too, most of them have thrusting weapon as in appearance. Now, some of them do have blades and stuff like that come with it, where you can do some slashing with them. But it isn't the slash that you're thinking of a swing like a sword swing or an axe swing with it. It is more along the lines of a cut with a withdrawal or a thrust. Yeah. Greg Gygax must be jumping for joy in Valhalla over these questions about pole arms. I'm sure he is. Yep. The truth is out there unless you're trying to understand Gygaxian logic. Yeah, we're trying to distill this down somewhat, right? Um, for for my money, my favorite polearm is the glaive, just because of the way it sounds. Just I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like the Volge. Um, the Bardiche is pretty cool.
yeah. Just the
Halberd.
names, that's all, right?
Yeah.
Halberd is your classic. Everybody knows about that. And if you see photos of the British beefeater guards out in front of the palace, that's what they're holding. Totally useless in modern warfare, because yeah, you've got a nice 8 foot long bar halberd, but I can shoot you from 100 yards off. It doesn't do you a lot of good. But
Right.
yeah, formal pole axe is seen as a convex-headed broadaxe in early examples, but the head is set at a convenient angle considering the point where the blade is most likely to impact upon the enemy. So this alone makes it quite distinct from ordinary long-hafted axe. Yeah, got a little back curve, a little bit stuff to it. It's a dramatic-looking weapon as much as anything else. Now, as far as swinging goes, the pole cleaver is the best description of it. You're cleaving up and down with it as opposed to side. But it's not that it's impossible to do so, but you're using the weight of the weapon and gravity to do some of the function for you.
Yeah, hence why they have a longer or a
Oh, hold
larger
on.
space required.
Yeah, let's go back to this one. In your comment above, you mentioned Megan, right? Oriental Adventures campaign. How is that going? Is that Tour based only in OA or other books? Um, John Miller philosophy. I'm curious. I've always wanted to play an Oriental Adventures campaign, but never did apart from the one shots. Now, John, scroll back through some of my material. Me, Dooms, and Yang and Shao talked about Oriental Adventures and that particular book. So we do make commentary on that. If you have not already seen it, go back in there and have a look at that if you want to. You want to get some more information on Oriental Adventures from a if I were to run an Oriental Adventures campaign, I would happily do it from that book. It's not bad at all. Not now that I wouldn't blend it with anything else. That would be a specific, strictly its own self setting. From my opinion on it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now here's some of your other ones. The Vools, just the names, right?
Yep.
Loshaber Axe. Like, come on. You as a kid you wanted one of these just so that you could say that at the table. I strike at it with my Loshaber Axe, right? I hit him with my Jizarm. Yeah.
Right.
We'll do is that on this channel or another one? My channel. Go back through all my live streams or whatever. I guess, and I have. I probably need to go back and look at my own stuff. But yeah, you can find it in one of my. It was that about a month ago, I think it was that we did it. Um,
Somewhere around there.
it
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be on this channel. Going back in there digging for it. Um, maybe when you get ready to, if are you going to do an instant premiere with this one again, Dooms?
Yeah, I need to get caught up on the instant premieres. I've been doing other live streams, live plays and that kind of stuff for the last
When
several weeks, but I've got a couple things in the edit pipeline.
right when you get to this section of it, because this comment came in here on this one, maybe throw a link into the stream with it with that part on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to bring that in here too. Goo and Dooms, will you play some? Now it's time for Dooms to talk. I haven't. But yes, I play on streams on Tuesday night. I play on the Dungeon Delvers stream. I run Falderanth on that Tuesday night game. Gonzalo's here. He does Paul. Dooms does some streaming on, or had been doing some streaming on some Friday nights on his channel, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, right, right. So I played in that same game, and well, I played in a couple of games over on that same channel on Bill's channel for 4 years, and then and then things came up, and I had to do some other things and just separate from that stuff a little bit because I was busy, and I'd found another game on Monday night, and I couldn't really play on Monday and Tuesday back to back. like that due to family responsibilities and work and all that. So I ended up dropping out of those games. And now that I have a little more time, on Friday nights, I'll stream on my channel. I'll either stream a board game, which right now we're doing Hero Quest, or last week we streamed Pathfinder 1E game that was really good and really fun. So Friday night over on my channel, we're doing the third quest of the revised Hero Quest. It's a lot of fun. And last Friday we did Pathfinder 1E. It's possible the next Friday we'll jump back to Pathfinder 1E, because what was supposed to be a one shot is going to end up being a 2 or 3 shot. And then I'm thinking on a Saturday here and there, I might stream a first edition AD&D game, you know, um, or something else on a Saturday.
Well, let's chat.
Yeah,
I think we could probably do something like that. Would seem the audience seems to want to see us curse each other as player and dungeon master and stuff. So
yeah. It's a good time. Uh, yeah. So Hero Quest is this Friday. So tomorrow, Hero Quest 3 is uh is tomorrow.
we would like to see you two do some 1E AD&D. Sure. I think we could probably come up with a plan for that. It probably won't be a regular thing, but we could
Right.
go on and play some and show them how hypocritical we are, because we'll have house rules. We need to do an episode on house rules, not so much individual house rules. We can talk about them, but the philosophy about changing things and making house rules and stuff like this. We could probably do
Yeah.
an. I do have a video that I've done about you know rules changes and house rules and stuff. Not named specifically that, but we could probably make a good stream for how to go about doing that sort of thing instead of just willy nilly changing stuff. Yeah, that would probably be a
Right.
good topic to go. Yeah. What else we got? Out of all the UA topics you discussed, what you don't like, if you have to keep one, but were given a chance to improve it, which would you choose? Ooh. The only one I really don't like is the weapon specialization and how it throws things weighted towards the player side and isn't really fair to the monster side. The rest of the stuff that's in here, take it or leave it. It's some of it's not bad. I could include it or not include it, and nothing in here that is really breaks things. Comeliness, uh, not unworkable. Maybe that's the one thing here that I don't like that I could probably go in and monkey with and change a little bit would be a comeliness, and not so much a comeliness part, but maybe incorporate into that a stat for your Cavaliers family history and stuff. Come up with something like that that can be rolled on a table and things like this. There is a role playing game that had that built into it that nobody likes or never heard of. It was a terrible game. It was called the Complete Enchanter, the highest level of all fantasy wargaming by a guy named Bruce Galloway. I own that book. The one thing I like about that book was the monetary system that was based on history and that section on your heritage. And that would be a piece where I could wrap in the ideas from the Cavalier into a comeliness value and kind of like have a stat that covered that sort of thing, as opposed to just straight up being your attractiveness.
Yeah, and
Uh,
and it's kind of a hard question in general, because most of the stuff that we included in this document for discussion was the stuff that we kind of like, right? So so we haven't discussed many of the things, that we don't like, except in passing. Things like Cavalier Paladin being
mhm.
moved under the Cavalier class. I don't have a problem with having additional classes. But if I were to um, want a Cavalier class or some sort of knight or something like that that's separate from the fighter and paladin, I would change that up considerably. And then I
Mhm.
would also I would change if I wanted a barbarian class,
Oh,
which
here we go.
I could see a time and a place for that. I would change that considerably. You
Mhm.
know, I wouldn't necessarily give the guy D12 hit dice, for example, just because. Um, you know, I wouldn't necessarily codify the magic item fear and stuff that the way that they did, and you know the various climbing and jumping and those sorts of skills and whatever that the barbarian has, with the
Yeah.
absence of a proficiency system which hadn't happened yet. It's basically giving that class non-weapon proficiencies when nothing else has it, right? And there's really no mechanical way to deal with those things without the
Mhm.
DM kind of coming up with it on the fly. And then if he's going to have to come up with that on the fly, okay, the barbarian jumps across the chasm. Okay, well he does this. Now the other characters are like, hey, can I jump across the chasm? What do you say? You say no. That's limited to barbarians. Or
Right.
yeah, you can do it easily. And then the barbarian's character's like, or player is like, hey man, what gives?
Yeah.
That's my special ability, you know.
Right.
So I don't think that they really fit in the game at this time. I would probably switch it around to use something more akin to a kit system like 2E did. Like, hey, here's the few archetypes of fighter that you can be. At their core, you're all still a fighter, but these archetypes that you can choose come along with a certain set of special abilities or quirks or something that makes it a little bit different and codifies that in a way that you actually know the rules around it and what you play. The other thing that we did talk about was the unarmed combat, and I've actually written a system for my own games that does away with all of the unarmed combat, and it includes improvised weapons under which a shield falls, or a or you know, like the leg of a table, or anything that can be used as a club or a stabbing implement, a
Mhm.
broken bottle, all of that. And I built a flow chart around it. And I find that that unarmed combat system runs a lot better. And I use it in all my games. And one day I'll get around to publishing it.
Cool. This John Miller's got a question. Any of you use the unarmed combat rules from AD&D, the simplified form of grappling rules derived from Gygax Fact for OD&D from the Strategic Review? I need to look this one up and have a look at it, but no, I don't. The ones I use are the ones out of Dungeon Master's Guide because that's what I have. Now, I'll definitely review the ones that are in Unearthed Arcana because a lot of people like them and say they're better. And I won't take anybody's opinion for it. I'll go ahead and read it myself and make that decision. But I would think that if enough people like it and say it's better, it's probably true. But I definitely want to look these up. The OD&D rules from Strategic Review. That's because I'm all into the nostalgia of the old school stuff here. So I'll give it a look. See if I can dig that one up from somewhere. All right. Let's see. Done an adventures dark and deep, but it took 5 hours to set up a first level thing. Okay. Oh, uh, sounds like a traveler character. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it takes 1 hour because you might die.
Oh, so what's next for the one that you scheduled? Dragon Bag classes, perhaps, or the rest of the orange spine books first? Um, maybe I should put a poll.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll put a poll on the page, and Joe Kaufman, I'll try to include his suggestions here on that poll and ban him from actually voting in the poll.
Right, right.
Yeah. No, I won't do that. That's not such a bad idea. Dragon Magazine classes. It's not something that I use, but why don't we look at them? You know, because um, just because it appeared in Dragon Magazine doesn't necessarily mean it's official unless it was stated as official. That was part of the stream that I did last week that was mentioned in there. Um, Sage advice wasn't specifically canon, but it was good advice on how to run things. From heaven. Maybe those two know each other. I don't know, right?
You're right. And you know, the classes would give you the opportunity to talk about the variant monk variant bard,
Yeah. We can start digging around in some of that. I haven't come up with anything right off the top of my um, list for what I wanted to do next week. Now, the week after, I'll be absent, but we can come up with something to do for next week. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
let's see.
And I'd eventually like to get into, some particularly Wilderness Survival Guide and Dungeoneer Survival Guide sometime down the road, where we can talk about the non-weapon proficiencies and what they might add to the game or detract from the game.
Sure, because we did that one stream on the Orange Spine books and generalized view of some of them, and that was an excellent stream that we did with Gang and Zhao, and Dungeon Delver dropped in with it for us. Same thing with
Yeah,
Gunthal. It was a great discussion in there about that. Um, Probably want to sit down and actually fully read through those. And you wanted to also talk about Manual of the Plains at some point. So we can continue
yeah,
on with the Orange Spine, but we don't have to do them one right after the other. We can break them up with
right.
some other suggestions too. Some of the, like the witch character class, would seem to be fairly popular. The adjustments and
hmm
to other
We
classes.
had the Archer.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the Archer comes along, I think, in that issue, comes along with some real interesting Lynn the Kafka rules regarding bows and arrows and
talk
including
about
things like alternate initiative and stuff like that, I think, from the same issue.
yes, and timing of the arrow flight, and man, he drills down into the minutia of it. Yeah,
Yeah, and before I forget, that's one reason, when you talked about including the pole arms, I wanted to remember one concept, and it's really interesting to me that, later on, and I've complained about it and pontificated on it on several occasions, that in the later years of Gary's life, when he emerged on Dragon's Foot and people started asking him stuff, and he, a lot of times he would just say, "Hey, listen, I don't know why I put that in there." So, sort of, to me, um, leading towards kind of the idea about, hey, you guys have been asking me about this for 30 years. Can you please stop? With like weapon speed factors, um, weapon versus armor type and all that. But you go and look back, and this was peak Gary Gygax right here, all of these pole arms. What was this? This was either in Strategic Review or really early Dungeon Magazine. I want to say it was in Strategic Review, one of the five or 7 or 8 issues.
mm,
And in those and in Early Dragon, there was this idea that including a great amount of complexity was entirely fine, entirely normal, and entirely encouraged. And then as the game progressed, some of that was lost. So going back to Lynn the Kafka, he was intensely detail oriented on some of the stuff that he did. Gary used to be intensely detail oriented on some of the stuff he did. So it typically, I mean, everybody can play the game, run the game however they want. But I think, just the idea that, yeah,
mhm.
Gary was never into that, so I don't feel like I need to mess with that is a sort of a cop out, even if people don't like that, me saying that at least, I mean, I can run my game how you want, and you can run your game how you want, and everybody else can
Oh,
run their
hey.
game how they want. But I think this is an example of, at least at one time, he did want a specific amount, and all of them did, a certain amount of complexity and specificity in the game system, without trying to make it, a combat simulation and keeping the abstraction. But this kind of stuff, and there's no real rules to back up these pole arms. They might
No,
have a different, some sort of tweak on the dial for weapon versus armor type, different space requirements, different damage. But for the most part, they're all the same weapon, but there's still a lot of detail here. And there was a time when TSR and the people behind it were interested in that complexity, even if they weren't for whatever reason in the later years.
yeah, no worries, Gonzalo. We're going back to Rollmaster here soon enough.
Yeah, I
We'll be
like those.
we'll be doing some more of those here coming up shortly. Since he's done his traipsing around the countryside, we'll get back into making some more Rollmaster stuff. Um,
Yeah, those are nice.
my disappointment with the pole arms is there really wasn't a whole lot of differentiation as far as it went for combat. It was, this is what it did, this is how it performed against the armor, this was its speed, and this is the damage it did. And some of them were useful for a little more than just that. And it didn't really
Right.
get into any adjustments like with this particular pole arm, the way it was designed. It's designed for disarming fighters or whatever, and it didn't have that rule in there that you could use it to disarm somebody with. It was just a pole arm that just did some damage. That could have been included in the game, but then you're digging more into the realism again and less on the abstract part of it. Yeah. You can imagine it when
Right.
you're thinking about how the fight goes, that this is what he's trying. Yeah.
Yeah, like some of these, like the Faucher fork, you can see that being used to disarm somebody. You can see that being used to grab somebody and ensnare them. You can see that being used to stab somebody, poke them. There's a whole bunch of stuff some of these you can do, or like
It
the
looks like a can
yeah,
opener.
right. Um, and on the last page of this, which you got to, I just want to mention that a lot of this he really did get from the sources he cites. Charles Fuchs, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Weapons and Armor of the Middle Ages or whatever, and you can actually go and find those books on archive.org. And I spent a while reading it a while ago, and you find that a lot of the stuff that I feel like Gygax opened that book at the library when he designed and developed all of the armors and the shields and ideas behind helmets and the pole arms and the type of swords, and
Yeah, that'd be a
it's
good
really interesting to read.
good book to pick up on. What is it? The Project Gutenberg has got a lot of old
Oh
stuff
yeah,
on there that you can dig and download. I found a copy of the Armor Guide, which is the Armory Guide, which is ARMORY, not from England, which is the heraldry rules. Whereas armor, the stuff you wear, is ARMOUR because that's the way they spell things over there. They had to add a bunch of letters extra in their words. But it was a great piece. I downloaded a copy of Celtic mythology from the Gutenberg Project. So that sort of stuff, those old books are just fantastic troves of just useful stuff for your games. I need to find a copy of this one too to dig into for some just more exposure to weapons and things of that armor. Right. Some modern analysis of medieval arms and armor that say Gygax got some things wrong based on that old scholarship, such as the interpretations of some of the armor types. Yeah, we mentioned that a little earlier on when we were talking about thieves with the studded leather, where studded leather, um, it's not your classic leather jacket with little metal studs on it. Um, the way drawings of it look that way, but it's more along the lines of brigandine armor is what they're thinking instead of just a leather coat with studs on it.
now's as good a time as any.
Yeah. I can't
You're in
do that.
timeout, Joe.
Yeah, yeah. Just not answer me at some point, or this will never end. Sorry, no, I'm not sorry about it either. We're having such a good time. Oh well, we're butting up on 2 hours. Time flies. We are having
It
such a
does.
blast doing this sort of thing. It's great. We appreciate y'all showing up.
Yeah,
Right?
lots of engagement, lots of people watching. I assume you guys all like the video. I mean, I even open up a YouTube tab just to make sure that I like the video because it really helps Great Old One's channel out.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you. Um, so we'll go ahead and kind of cut it loose at this end since we're butting up on 2 hours and being old people, we got to have our restroom break, right? So thanks for coming on here and joining us again. What are you doing again tomorrow night on your channel?
Hero Quest, the third quest with the same group, except one of our guys is down in my state. He's down in Florida for the week on vacation, and we're subbing in Michael DLSD 25.
Oh, okay.
He's always around on here, you know,
Yeah, he is.
goofing
I was
off and
wondering where
causing
he was, but
trouble.
I usually on here hassling us, but we didn't see him.
Yeah, he popped on for a few comments
Oh,
up there and whatnot.
I missed it. Okay, wasn't paying attention.
But yeah, he's joining us tomorrow. I think we'll go
Awesome.
9 p.m. Eastern to 1 a.m. Eastern.
Y'all can't be older than 25, huh? Well, I just celebrated my 35th anniversary of 25. So you got me down there, Megan. Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for you guys for coming out and joining us and checking this out. Watch Doom Sword's channel for the replays of these sorts of things. Go watch his content stuff. Watch his game again tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on here and hanging out with me again.
Oh, that's always a pleasure. I have a great time with this.
Cool. I'm going to cut you loose and then end this one. All right, let me go with just me doing, here we go, just me doing this. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us here in our discussion of Unearthed Arcana and other miscellanea that we ended up getting sidetracked and stuff on. Again, please, if you like this, please like and subscribe. Go over to Doomsword's channel, like and subscribe his channel as well. Give us some feedback on this. Give us comments. Anything you want to see. We've got some great examples of things tonight that you wanted us to talk about and check out next. Leave those comments. We'll take a look at all of that stuff. And I will see, well, I won't see you. You'll see me again next Thursday. Right. So thanks again for joining us on this fun trip.